Welcome to the third episode of the Accelerate Europe podcast, brought to you by Advansor, the market-leading manufacturer of quality CO2 refrigeration systems. I'm Andrew Williams, the editor of Accelerate Europe magazine, the quarterly magazine looking at natural refrigerant market trends, policies and end users in Europe, published by Shecco. Today I'm in Brussels at the headquarters of Delhaize Belgium, part of the Ahold Delhaize Group, to hear about the retailer's latest plans and projects with natural refrigerants. I'm joined today by David Schalenbourg, Director, Building Projects, Format and Maintenance at Delhaize Belgium. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew. Welcome here at Delhaize, and happy to see you again.
Perhaps you could start by outlining your role at Delhaize.
Okay. Well, as Director of Building Projects, I'm in charge of building new stores and also renovating existing stores. There's a second part looking at the format of the store, so it's the concept, what does the store look like, and what is the technology that makes the store function. And there's a third part, the third pillar is maintenance. We want to run efficient stores, energy-wise, and also on a cost level to have the most efficient stores possible.
Okay. Well, we're here today to start off by talking about an interesting project. So recently I visited the new Delhaize urban farm in the Brussels suburb of Ixelles. That puts natural refrigerant CO2 at the heart of Europe's first supermarket to house a greenhouse on its roof. We published an article on our website r744.com. This offered a preview of what's to come in the next issue of Accelerate Europe magazine. For this podcast, what can you tell us about the urban farm?
Yes, Andrew, it's quite an exciting project for Delhaize. So we start working on, first there was the remodeling of the store. So it's an existing building in quite a dense urban area in Brussels, surrounded by a lot of residential neighborhood, a lot of housing. And we remodeled the store. We installed a full CO2 installation with heat reclaim. And then we had our sustainability department, and they were already thinking about doing this project, like putting a farm on a rooftop. And so we brought the story further, we developed the idea, and in fact the sustainability team was looking for a spot to install this urban farm, and two things came together. And so we had this, I would say, synergy between two ideas: an efficient store with a CO2 installation where we had excess energy, and an urban farm project with a glass house which needed to be heated. So their teams came together, and out of this fusion of ideas came something. 1 + 1 became 3. So we ended up with building an urban farm on top of the supermarket we renovated just a year before. Mm-hmm. The urban farm opened in last October. So the basic idea is that we added another floor on top of the building. Structurally wise, it was quite a challenge because we had to see that the existing structure of the building was sufficient to support all these layers of soil that we added on top of the building. And in fact now this garden is opening, and we're selling vegetables from the garden in the supermarket.
And so how does this relate to the use of natural refrigerant CO2?
If we look at CO2 emissions, there are two main drivers of CO2 emissions, and both are integrated or one part of this project. So on one hand you have food waste and the food chain, and the other hand you have the refrigeration or the type of refrigerant. And we see that with this project we address both of them. So first we grow locally and we sell locally. We sell the products in the supermarket. They're not transported to other supermarkets. They're just sold on the in the commercial space below the urban farm. And secondly, The excess energy by heat reclaim from our refrigeration installation, the CO2 installation, is used to heat the glass house on top of the store. So there's this kind of interaction and cohabitation between both ideas. So I would say it's almost a closed circle.
Well, we visited the store a couple of weeks ago, and certainly it's very impressive. There's quite a lot of space on the roof there. There's not just the greenhouse, there's also some outdoor space as well. Perhaps you could tell our listeners a bit more about what you're actually growing in the greenhouse.
Okay, what we're growing in the greenhouse, it's first, no exotic fruits, because it's linked to the season and to our climate. So we grow local vegetables. So we have salad, we're going to plant strawberries, tomatoes, eggplant, so quite a variety. We have one part, as I told, of the urban farm, it's covered, it's with the glass house, and the other part is just in the open, it's open air. Also, very important, it's permaculture, it's called. So we're also, the food that we produce over there meets regulations and can be sold, meets the criteria to be consumed afterwards.
Okay, and so from a marketing and sustainability point of view, what are you doing to market the food that's grown on the roof?
First, we try to raise awareness around what we're doing. Today, I must admit, we did some campaigns to bring the idea out in the open. For example, Brussels government has reacted quite enthusiastically, and the local minister of environment has been there to open the urban farm in October. On the other hand, we also connect to the local neighborhood and to schools, and that's a program that's now building up. We're also starting communication through website, local community, and address people to be part of this story. Okay. So we work together with a partner who does the exploitation of the urban farm for us, and we have also a classroom setting on site that, for example, when schools come by, we can show them the whole chain from planting, harvesting, until selling in the store.
So how important was this community aspect in deciding upon the Boondale location?
I think it's one of the success factors of the project, because if you imagine in a dense urban area, there's a lack of open space. And here we are exploiting what I would call, as an architect, the fifth facade of the building, which normally just is reserved for technical installation, and quite often it's not a pretty view. So around the supermarket we have some also high-rise residential buildings who look down upon our building, and our neighbors are quite happy to see a green garden instead of some technical installations that produce noise. So in fact we're giving added value to the city, and it also means that this product, this type of project, has the biggest added value in city centers. That's why we look at other big cities in Belgium to repeat the same exercise. But you need the dense urban fabric, together with a building that's structurally sound to support the structure.
Yeah,
and
maybe you could go into a little bit more detail about the challenges, because obviously this store is quite interesting in that the floors are perhaps the other way around. Sometimes you might have the car park underneath, but the car park's on top of the store, and then on top of the car park you've got the greenhouse with the soil, etc. So were there some structural challenges in this?
Yes, you need to structurally and stability-wise, you need to see how the building supports this weight. The fact that the car park is on top of the store or not underneath, it doesn't make a real difference. Like today with our new buildings, when we do a rebuild of a store, like we call it, and we see that there is a capacity, a load-bearing capacity to install whether solar panels or an urban farm. So we take this into account. Whether we don't realize it each time, but we see, depending on the location, what is the best solution. But renewable energy is also an important one. You also maybe saw on the roof that there were some solar panels. It's not very large, but now in other stores we're just looking to cover the whole roof of the store with solar panels and then become also more self-proficient energy-wise. We're also looking wind energy, but that's something new that we're studying right now. And then we meet some challenges also. Permit-wise, you need always this building permit. And even with the urban farm, you need a building permit to build upon your roof, but I would say that this project didn't meet a lot of resistance from neighbors or people living around the building.
So what feedback have you received from customers so far?
Very positive. First, they need to know that there is an urban farm on top of their store. Sure. And that's not always the case. Like when visiting and when going around and when addressing people about it, they're quite astonished. So it's something like you only see it from certain street angles. So I hope now by next season we also connected the urban farm by a path on the outside of the building to the street level.
Okay.
So what will happen in spring and summer, we will open the gate and so people can go in the garden and have a view from a small wooden terrace and see what's happening over there. So there will be more interaction, but that's something that will start up now in the coming months. And I certainly invite you to come and have a look at the garden, because you saw it now in the winter situation, but also people planting the crops, and it will start now in a few months' time. I invite you to come and have a look when we are going to harvest next time.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how this develops in the long term, both on site, but also in terms of a strategy that Delhaize might be using elsewhere. You mentioned that each site is obviously very specific, and there are certain considerations to take into account about each building, but going forward, is this something that you are going to be looking to bring to other locations?
Yes, we see that other authorities or other cities are in demand for the same idea, the same concept. And yes, we look at it to repeat the experience, but we have to check feasibility on a structural level, also urban with the permit level, if it's feasible, and then go on. And I think the project is also about showing what's possible and what we can do, because the fact that you reclaim excess energy and make use of it, it's a positive aspect. It's a little bit also like we put solar panels on the roof. We also have in our supermarkets charging points for electrical cars. So it's like producing energy and make efficient use of this energy. There are some limitations about we can't become an energy producer. We can cover a part of our own consumption, but I think that's also something that will evolve in the coming years, and it would be a waste if we won't use it. There's another part, and that I think is opening towards the future. It's like with real estate, imagine that you have apartments or flats on top of the store. why not use the excess energy to heat those flats, or to have some reuse or use of this energy that you're creating. And at that point, a store on the ground floor of a residential development can be a plus and not a minus.
Yeah, I think moving on to how this model can be applied elsewhere, I think it's interesting that we're seeing it's almost complete system integration. So the heat that's reclaimed from the refrigeration system is not only being used to heat the store, but also the greenhouses. What do you think this kind of setup will mean for the business model of, say, traditional boiler central heating systems in future? Are we seeing a future in which the refrigeration system can provide the entire heating and cooling for a supermarket, do you think, or are we not quite there?
Technically, there are some challenges, like when we're doing a rebuild, a completely new store with new building, we don't meet a lot of problems, like to heat a store with the reclaimed heat of the refrigeration installation, and it works quite fine. But when we are in a renovation, a remodeling of an existing building with an existing ventilation system, you can meet some problems, because the temperature and also of the water will be lower than the classic temperature. You don't arrive at 90 degrees with the water temperature that you will use to heat the store. So you're more around 50-60 degrees, and then you have to see that the heat exchangers in the store are you need to dimension them bigger than they are today, because otherwise you will meet temperature problems. And one of our experience of 2017 is that we did some remodelings. Remodelings also in a fast context, where we remodel a store in about 12 days. We put in a new installation. We took out the heating, and we started to heat the store with the existing ventilation and so on, with the new system. And then we met the problem that since the water temperature is lower, it's much more difficult to arrive at this comfort temperature. But then I'm talking not on the refrigeration level, everything is working fine, but it's really the temperature, the ambient temperature in the store. And so you need to take this into account to don't have problems. We had some complaints about our collaborators and clients, like in the start, and now we're working on that to anticipate that when we make the switch to a
and I suppose this is why
reclaim.
the urban farm project is also a pilot, because it's the chance to iron out some of these difficulties that you've encountered at first, and then you can perfect it over time for new installations. You mentioned new installations in 2017. Maybe you could just briefly outline some of Delhaize's most recent natural refrigerant stores.
In the last half of 2017, we opened 7 completely brand new stores, so new buildings with a top-of-the-shelf installation. So it meant for each store we reduced energy consumption with 30% on average. We did also some 7 remodelings, also where we introduced new CO2 installations, but with some temperature issues, but that we are iron out, like you say. For all the stores, like, we don't have fossil fuels, they're out, so we can disconnect from our gas connection. So that's a big way forward. And we see that our average GWP is going down. We now have more than half of the company operated stores are on CO2, and we're also looking like we have an affiliated model to also bring it further there, and to pass the message to our affiliated partners that this is the way to go, and that CO2 offers a good solution energy-wise, energy consumption, and also regulation-wise, because they protect themselves. As you know, in Belgium, there's quite a strict regulation on leakages, and CO2 leakages are, yes, linked to the CO2 emissions. Their impact is much more acceptable than from the classic R404 and so on.
Yeah. In terms of the commitment to CO2 transcritical, is that preferred system for Delhaize, or are you also using different natural refrigerants such as hydrocarbons?
We're looking into that matter also. We started the stores that I talked about previously, like all the stores that we opened end of 2017, are big stores. So they all have an average size of about 2,200 square meters commercial space. We also have a lot of smaller stores. We have smaller banners, and for our smaller banners we're looking also for natural refrigerant solutions, and it's for a variety of reasons. It's not only the part like environmental friendly, the leakages, but also we discovered one part like we can have quite space efficient installations which take less space than a classic installation. And if you see that those smaller banners are quite often or almost often in city centers where square meters are expensive, you just want to spend the least square meters possible to your technical space, and you want to use it as much as possible in a commercial way. And that's why we're looking with different manufacturers to find solutions. We are doing some tests and that we want to bring forward now in 2018 and go on with tests in the field.
Sure, yeah, that was one of the things that struck me when we were visiting the urban farm, actually, that the CO2 transcritical rack was quite well integrated into the building. It's there in the car park. It's yes, it's in the machine room, but not in a position that dominates. It seemed to be relatively compact, and is this kind of the structure that Delhaize is wanting to put in place going forward?
What we see is that when we install a new installation in an existing building, there's a lot of excess space, like our technical rooms become oversized.
Sure. Yeah.
It's almost like a ballroom. You can organize a party in it. So when you see the new buildings, there we size the technical rooms down, and there you come to quite compact solutions. We had the store in Bruges where you have a 20 square meter room where the whole installation is in for a building with a commercial area of about 2,400 square meters. And when people look into it, they say, no, it's not possible. It's just like too small to give the cooling to this big store. So yes, it helps us build more efficient buildings and less space consuming.
Okay, thanks David. It's very interesting to hear about the urban farm and Delhaize's future projects for natural refrigerants. That was episode 3 of the Accelerate Europe podcast, brought to you by Advansor.